Hey guys, it's Michelle Pippin, and I am back for week 2 of P School, Profit School, Pippin School, whatever you call it. But today we are talking about positioning. It is by far one of the least discussed and most important aspects of business success. In fact, I just posted on my personal page, not that I suggest this, but you could actually ignore everything I talk about, actually ignore everything I do, including like content marketing or social media or anything else. You could actually ignore all of that and just pay special attention, take special care of your positioning, and you can literally make millions of dollars per year on repeat. I have some examples to share with you regarding that. And it's important, it's so important because it allows everything else to be easier in your business, right? And we're going to figure out why that is. We're going to talk about why it's so important in this module. We're also going to, so we're talking about why it's so important. We're going to talk about some questions that you need to answer deliberately if you are to properly position yourself in your industry. A lot of people think only in terms of branding. They think only in terms of what they do or their colors or their website or whatever, and they never think really critically about how they are viewed in their marketplace, how they're viewed in relationship to everybody else that is selling or doing whatever you do. And so positioning is one of those things that if you ignore it, everything else in your business becomes extremely difficult, right? Harder than it needs to be. And if you're doing it, then everything starts to get easier, right? And so throughout my entire career, I guess, as an entrepreneur, I have been very fortunate. It's one of the things I'm most grateful for is that I never thought of things in terms of positioning. I don't know that I ever used that word back in the day. I certainly didn't think of those terms, but I inherently was aware of how I was perceived, right? So as an example, when I go to a large conference and there's 8,000 people there or 10,000 people there, I'm not hanging out with the people who are attending the conference, right? I know better. For one, I'm not that great socially. I'm not exactly like awkward in a social setting, but I don't enjoy it. I'm certainly not going to do my brand any favors. I'm pretty intolerant of people and excuses and all that stuff. It doesn't make for like any Miss Congeniality awards for sure. And so I hang out with other intense people like me, i.e. I hang out with people who own the conference, people who are speaking at the conference. I hang out with the celebrities. I'm always finding a way to be backstage, right? It's a positioning issue. And so these are the things that makes interviews with me so much easier. It makes money come in so much easier. It decreases the importance, frankly, of funnels. Not that I think you should have them, but it decreases the importance because people are naturally aligned with buying from you, right? They understand who you are and why they should want to come in closer. Hold on one second. I have a fire going. It's contained. It's my fireplace, but it's getting warm in here. Okay. So as I promised, we're going to start really with talking about why it is so critically important to position yourself and just to be deliberate about it. And this goes so much deeper than branding, right? This is so much deeper than what you say about yourself. This is about every aspect of how you show up. When you're positioned properly, accurately in your industry, you will attract, prepare, and condition people to buy from you. But first, you condition them to watch you, to look for you, to wonder what you're doing, to wonder what you're using, to wonder how you're doing life or business or marriage or whatever it is. Positioning is so important because it helps you combat commoditization. I've done full trainings on why your market wants to commoditize you. Essentially, when you are commoditized, when you're just as good as anybody else doing what you do, or your products are just as good as anybody else's products, what happens with that is you are commoditized and their decision making gets easier, right? The truth is we live in a pretty complex world. It didn't used to be this complex. We're looking for ways to simplify. And so if your market can commoditize you and make you equal to and or the same as other people in the industry, they are free to just buy the cheapest option because you have not, in their minds, been made superior or different or any way. They just lump you in and pick the most convenient or the cheapest price. It helps you combat commoditization. It also helps you combat price resistance, right? Because the truth is, when you are really showing up authentically you, when you are not trying to be like everybody else in your market, when you have been very deliberate with why people should buy from you versus any other option out there, then what happens is price becomes a whole lot less relevant, right? Now, there's gonna be certain people who like literally can't afford you. I mean, I've certainly been that person, right? Like there was a time in my life I couldn't even afford like contact lens solution, right? So I get that, but for the most part, people will buy the best that they can afford. So there's like a bottom 20% who really just have to buy the cheapest thing out there because it's just it's just who their financial circumstances like dictate that. There's a top 20% who are always just going to buy premium not because they need premium or because you did such an amazing job selling them. They buy premium because that's who they are, right? And then there's that 60% in the middle where they're going to buy based on how you package, not how you price. Price is one part of the package, but they're going to buy based on all these other typically very emotional considerations, right? So positioning alleviates a lot of the struggles that you have as an entrepreneur, right? It alleviates people ghosting you, right? Like when Gary Vaynerchuk, like if he emails you directly, like you email him back, you don't just ghost, right? You just don't go away. It alleviates people inconveniencing you. It eliminates them like paying late or canceling things the last minute and changing their phone number and expecting you to like chase them down, right? The truth is, in business, without deliberate positioning, everything is flipped on its head, right? The consumers, the market, they expect you to chase after them like a rabid dog over its next meal. Your market, if you're not properly positioned, feels like they're in control and they get to dictate terms and they get to decide when they pay you, and all these things happen, right? And it's like those are the most annoying things in business. But I tell you, when you pay, what is it now? I think it's $12,000, $15,000 dollars to spend a day with Gary Vaynerchuk in his office. Like you don't pay that like $4,000 and then send in another $2,000 and then you don't do that, like make up your own payment terms, and you certainly don't cancel on him and decide you're not going to come and ask him to rearrange everything at the last minute, right? So proper positioning alleviates that struggle of people inconveniencing you, people trying to make up their own terms. It eliminates, it puts you in a position of really being able to work with people you really like, eliminates having to work with people you hate. It eliminates the struggle you have with money. Either too long of a time is between the money that you're getting in or it's just coming in little trickles. So when you're properly positioned, the money does take care of itself as well. Why? Because it makes selling easier. It aligns you with the right market who will cheerfully pay your fees. And I do not know for the life of me why more business schools, why more business coaches aren't talking about positioning. What they will talk about are certain aspects of positioning. They'll talk about your funnels, they'll talk about your bio, which is important. They'll talk about how your website looks, also important. But when you are focusing on those outward, like tangible parts of your brand, and you have not really adopted a lifestyle of proper positioning, if it doesn't affect the way you are showing up every single day, it actually is going to work against you, because your website is going to look one way and then everything else that's happening is going to look something else, right? One of the best compliments I get anywhere I go to speak or at my own events or when I'm speaking at someone else's event, top compliment I get is, "Oh my God, Michelle, you're exactly the same in person as you are on your live streams." And the truth is like, I don't know any other way to be, but also I'm extremely deliberate about authentic and accurate positioning. Also, aligned positioning. I have always aligned my positioning with where I wanted to be, not always where I felt like I was. We'll talk about that because we do not want to have a mentality of lying to the market. I'm never going to lie to my market. We do not want to have a mentality of like the fake it till you make it. That's not what this is about. It goes way deeper than that. It affects everything in your business. And here's the thing. Proper positioning affects everything in your business. Poor positioning infects everything in your business. It's infectious. It starts to run through. It starts to take away that beautifully designed website because it feels like a farce. It starts to infect your sales process. It starts to turn business around in your head where you're chasing, right? It is an infectious disease, poor positioning. So let's move on. Positioning, just kind of like a quick overview, right? And we're going to get into how it shows up, questions you need to ask, tools that you can use, but also activities that you need to be participating in. Positioning is basically who you are to your ideal market. Who are you? I want to give you the wrong answer first, okay? The primary wrong answer for who you are is another whatever. Another option, another coach, another retreat, another book, another course, like just another blank. That's the wrong answer. That is infectious positioning, the kind that infects everything that you do. So if you are just another option, you are going to struggle bringing in consistent or impressive or even just enough income to get by. Being just another option kind of sends the message that your market can get whatever it is that you sell any myriad of other places, right? And you need them to know that there's something they get from you that they cannot get anywhere else. I was talking with someone this weekend who has a membership site, and largely what she provides are recipes, right? And she has the experience. She has everything she needs to rock this out. And she said, people think they can get recipes anywhere. I'm like, they can. Google that, right? Google that. They can get anywhere. But they can only get her by going through her membership. And you need to be able to define and package what going through you actually looks like. You need to package your secret sauce. Side note, I guess commercial break. We are starting naked. The pre-work is already dropped. Our first training module goes out today. BeMichellePippin.com/naked. If you struggle at all with positioning, if you know that there's something missing to set you apart from any and all competition, you need to join Naked. It's not a member benefit. It's an outside program. BeMichellePippin.com/naked. But when you are poorly positioned, it invites price comparisons. It just invites people to compare you to anybody else, right? It invites them to put you off. It invites them to think that you need them more than they need you. You have to position yourself very deliberately. And I'll be very honest with you. This is part of my secret sauce, right? This is one of the things that I feel like sets me apart from any and all, business mentors or what have you. I can clearly see when your positioning is off, and I know how to properly position our clients. So let's talk about the typical approach to positioning, if they cover it at all. The typical approach is just kind of thinking in terms of branding, like who will you be and to who, right? Like who will you be into what market? Like, and they just kind of stop there, and then they go into like the superfluous stuff, like the colors and the fonts and the layout of the site. And I'm not saying those things aren't important. I'm just saying they're not going to do anything for you if you are not living your positioning. You have to live into that next level you. You've got to live into who you want to be in your market. You've got to live into that persona in order to be well positioned in the market. When you're well positioned, what happens is there's a shift that takes place. And this actually happens pretty quickly, right? There's a shift that takes place when you go from poor or, just willy-nilly positioning, just kind of take whatever. When you go from that to very deliberate positioning, there's a quick shift that takes place, and you start to see that people are looking for your content. People are asking for you by name. People are, reading and engaging with your stuff. People are messaging you. It's a whole different ballgame. It's a really, really deliberate shift, and it actually happens pretty quickly, right? So I want to talk a little bit about this because I did promise publicly that I would say this, and I really hesitate to say it because I do not want you to forgo content marketing or any of that. I don't want you to forgo that. I want you to continue with that. And actually, we're going to talk about how consistent content is a great tool to continue to position yourself very deliberately in the market. However, my parents' company is a perfect example of a company that can make multi-millions a year without any of that stuff, purely by positioning. Here's the deal. My parents' company is positioned as the best. They're positioned as a concierge contractor. They are positioned as the people who baby the living heck out of their clients. They are the best, right? So it works out, right? They're positioned as the best, and they actually are the best. But they do none of the stuff that I sit here and talk with you about, right? But what they've done is they have positioned themselves in the community as the place where the discerning homeowner goes, right? And so what happens is, even though their fees are higher, people are afraid to go someplace else. They're afraid to use another contractor because my parents' company is so well positioned. And we've used the tools that I'm going to share with you in this, but so this is so incredibly important for us to do. And I invite you to just go through this process with me. We're going to do a little bit of, let me see, I'm going to find my notes. We're going to do a little bit more of, some importance. I'm going to give you a journaling prompt, and I also want to make sure that we cover the questions you need to be able to answer trippingly off the tongue, very, very deliberately, and the tools that I use to position myself and also anyone that I work with, right? So, all right. I thought I had a little journal question, and now I cannot, I can't find it. So I'll come back to it, I guess. All right, let's start with the questions, okay? These are questions I don't have answers for you. These are questions that you need to have answers for. These are questions that you need to think about and make sure that the answer to these questions, that you are living this, that when you're showing up, whether you're showing up live or in person, whether you're showing up in writing or in a video, whether you're showing up at a networking meeting, not that I recommend that, but if you do that, you want to make sure that you're showing up in a way that reflects the answers to these questions, right? So give me some love hearts if you get that. Like, we need to show up in a way that lives the answers to these questions. You got to live into your positioning. You got to live into it. It's not something you do and hand off to a branding person and then move on, right? What you do is you have to live this out. If you guys have any questions for me about positioning, we have a lot more to go, but if there's any questions you have, please put those in the comments so I can be sure to get to those. Here are some of the questions that I need you to answer. Remember, the key is to be deliberate about who you show up as, right? The key is to be deliberate about who you show up as, regardless of where you're showing up or what your industry is or anything else. So here are some questions. How will you court prospects, right? How will you court prospects? In other words, how will you reach out to them? How will they find you? How will you engage with them, right? Like, so how will you court prospects? What does that look like? So, and I'll give you an example. Like, the way I do it is I have an omni-channel approach to marketing. So I'm kind of everywhere. I produce more content than maybe 98% of other people online, and I show up consistently, so that gets people's attention. And I'm always speaking the truth. I'm speaking truths that other people are thinking and not talking about. And I'm also marrying that with a how-to approach that goes deeper than how to as well. So how I court prospects is I show up as a leader, as a teacher, as a mentor, right? And then of course I always have a call to action. So the other question you need to ask, this is super important, is who will have access to you and when? Who will have access to you and when? This is something that we give way too little thought to. Right? Way too little thought. It's kind of like you're just kind of going around your marketplace and you're being so available, right? Because you're afraid, what if I'm not available and what if they go to someone else and sorry, Sophie's snoring right beside me. Stop snoring. So what's happening is you are literally going through the market and you're just like so available that no one really sees the value in your accessibility. Does that make sense? Like if you're accessible by everyone all the time, then no one's really going to value access to you, right? You've got to be able to define who has access to you and when and how much access they have. This is important for any industry out there. You simply cannot be the one who's like, available anytime. Like, yeah, you want to go to coffee? Yeah, I'm available right now. Like, I'll leave right now. It's like people don't value that. And even it doesn't matter if you're selling lipstick or essential oils or coaching or consulting, although it's way worse if you're selling coaching or consulting. But it doesn't really matter what you're selling. If you are so accessible, people are going to think they make the rules. They'll cancel on you. They'll put off payment. They'll do all manner of disrespectful things because you're poorly positioned. All right, moving on. What are your rules of engagement, right? What are your rules of engagement? All leaders of industry have rules of engagement. When their employees have access to them, how accessible they are to the media, how accessible they are to clients and customers, right? These are, stop, wake up. All right, now, I want you to, we're going on with more questions. So picture yourself as the person that you know and really want to be in your industry. I want you to picture that person in your mind's eye, okay? And I want you to think, what does she do every day, right? What does that girl do every day? The girl who makes 6 figures every month on repeat and with ease. What does she do every day? How does she show up? Where does she show up? When she does show up, how often is she showing up, right? And with what energy does she show up, right? In the Naked program, one of the things I'm talking about is really showing up in the same way publicly that you show up with the people who know you best and accept you anyway, right? And the truth is, this is something I kind of just accepted about myself after multiple times trying to get pictures taken of me speaking live. I'm just kind of an intense energy. I'm that way with Chris, right? I'm not like your fun, girly person. I have a dry sense of humor. But how I show up, the energy that I show up is so authentic that people can feel that people can feel that on the other side of the screen or in the audience, right? So not only that, what does she do? How does she show up? When does she show up? How often? In what energy? And how does she engage, right? Positioning is something that I can easily see when it's off. But here's the thing, that's not my magic. Your market sees it too. Your market sees when your positioning is off. They see. Remember when I said that if you do what we're talking about, especially when we get to the tools part, when you're doing that, you'll see a quick turn in your business because you'll see a quick turn in how people are engaging with you, right? And how they respond to you, and how quickly they pay, and how available they are to accommodate your schedule. You will see these things very quickly. Well, good news, bad news, right? On the flip side, as soon as your positioning starts to slip, either because of a fear-based mind or because you've just been kind of inconsistent or things got really easy, you just kind of fell off the bandwagon, as soon as that kind of stuff happens, you see an equal and opposite shift. shift, you start to see people going back to that, well, she'll call me back again. I'm not going to worry about calling her. I'm not going to worry about calling her back. I'll pay later. I know I missed the deadline. I'll miss the deadline and then ask if I can still get in on the early bird rate. Like, people start to think they're in control again, right? So when you're thinking about positioning, one way, and hear me out, don't turn me off when I say this, right? The best way to think about positioning is to think about creating a character in your business, right? Like a character development. Now, in my business and in yours, that character is based off of me, right? It's based equally off of me and also off of the perceptions of people like me in the marketplace, right? So I'm going to get into how that matters. But when you are thinking about positioning, you've got to really bring the character of you into the marketplace. You've got to be willing to take center stage of your own business. You've got to be willing to be the face of your own brand. And it doesn't matter what you sell. But you can't just be willing to do that if you're not deliberate about the character development. Does that make sense? Because we already know that when inconsistencies are coming up, and I'm going to go over a couple of those in a minute, when inconsistencies come up, it actually starts chopping away at your positioning. The positioning thing, and again, I never thought of it in terms of positioning, but I just thought of it in terms of actually common sense. But the positioning thing is why I have done no networking ever. Right? Not only don't think I would really enjoy it, I wouldn't really represent my brand that well, but I knew as a coach that I could not afford to show up week after week after week at a networking meeting and showing up with them as their peer if I expected them and needed them to pay me as a mentor. Does that make sense? It'd be poor positioning. People do not pay someone in the same boat as they are to get them out of the boat. They pay someone on the shore to get them out of the boat, right? So here's the thing with the positioning. I just inherently knew that I could not show up like every other business coach out there, right? Hold on, my husband is texting me. Live training. Okay. So that's one thing that just, it was something that was inherent to me. Plus, again, common sense. A lot of people in business, they hate networking, right? And they put on their brave face and they put on their painted on smile and they dust off their business cards, and they could be like fighting with their husband all the way there, but then they put it on just like back in the day, if you ever went to like a Southern Baptist church, right? You're fighting all the way to church, and like you've been yelling at the kids, and then you get out of the church and somebody's like, oh, hey, how are you? And your mom's like, just fine. Right? And so I'm sure anybody who has ever gone to church with their family as kids has had that experience. But we do that in networking. And so I inherently knew that not only could I not afford to show up as a peer because it was improper positioning for what I wanted, but I also could not afford to be networking for business when a lot of those people were hoping to find a business coach who could teach them how to get business and make money without having to go to those weekly networking meetings, right? So anyway, positioning, much more than branding. It is the who you're going to show up and for what market, how you're going to show up. This is about every aspect of what you do in your business. It's about how you follow up, right? If you do not have, what do I call that? I call it an unfinished business sort of email, right? If you do not have an email that says, hey, if I don't hear back from you, I'm going to assume you're a no, right? Resting back control. If you don't have one of that, you need to have one, right? Ask me, just message me and I'll give you my example. But this is about how you follow up. It's about how you court your prospects. It's about how accessible you'll be and what the rules of access are, right? The big key for all of us, regardless of what it is that we sell, is to avoid neediness in our positioning, right? To avoid neediness. Needy is creepy, right? People are repelled by needy. Need is an actual repellent to everything that you want. And it doesn't matter if it's love or money or acceptance or affirmation. It doesn't matter. If you are needy with it, it will be withheld from you. I had a cousin who is actually a really great, I'm not going to say guy or girl because I know in case they watch, but like actually a really great person, right? I have a cousin who's a great person. I have some cousins who aren't such great people, right? They're all good people, but this person was always in need of affirmation. And they bragged incessantly, right? They were so needy of that being affirmed that they bragged on themselves over and over again. And as kids, you know what happened? We never complimented that person. We never did, because the need for that affirmation repelled us, because there was so much focus on it, right? So when you are needy in your branding and in your positioning, you feel like you're chasing clients because they are running from you. They also feel like you need them more than they need you, right? So need is a repellent. That's the only way that need works. All right. So your positioning actually tells people who you think you are, right? It actually tells people if you think you are a peer with them. It actually tells people if you think you are deserving of the main stage. It tells people if you think you are the best in your industry at what you do. Your positioning, how you're showing up, all the rules of engagement around your brand, all of that is becoming evident with every time you show up, whether you're poorly positioned and that way it's working against you, or properly positioned and all of this is working for you. So if you think about writing your character into life, right, living into the positioning, you have to just always keep in mind the person you have decided to ultimately be in the marketplace. Right? Ultimately be in the marketplace. The truth is, like, I had to be the leader and the mentor in 2004. When I first started, I had to show up with that persona. I had to show up with that belief in myself, and all of my actions had to support that. All right, interested in how you follow up that conveys, I'll assume you'll, not interested. Oh, okay. So that is my like drop dead email, I guess, or dead stop email. Drop dead sounds a little dramatic, but that's the email. Like, you know how when you are proposing to someone, you've proposed maybe a working arrangement or agreement or whatever, or even joining membership, and they don't respond to you, right? So in the coaching world, the consulting world, typically you have a meeting with that person and you find out a little bit about what they want and where they are right now, and then you're like, okay, great, I'll follow up with you via an email. They're like, awesome, I can't wait. And then you write that email and you send it off and you give them a few different options and you followed all the rules, and then they just go silent on you, right? Now, this is a person who's literally sat eye to eye with you, digitally or otherwise. They've sat eye to eye with you. They acted like they were committed. They said all the right things, and then they just go silent, right? So I do send that a couple of times, right? Like, I will follow up. When I had one-on-one clients, I would follow up with that, certainly. Like, our goal, our role, our responsibility is to follow up. However, at a certain point, and it's different for everyone, but at a certain point, once you know they've gotten the email, and once you have, they're just being rude enough to just not respond, then I would send it one more time, just say, hey, I'm not in the position, I'm not in the habit of being a pest, and I do know what my email says is, I know the energy of unfinished business on both, on both of our ends, and so if I don't hear back from you by Friday at 12, we're going to choose to go with another private client, and I wish you all the best. And I also say, and if you decide that you are ready to move forward as we discussed, let me know. I'll find another coach or consultant who would be ready to work with you. In other words, I let them know that them not responding is not them not deciding. Right? That I'm not sitting around waiting for some boy to call me 3 weeks later, right? Like, no. I let them know that, listen, if you're not interested, that's totally fine. And if I don't hear from you, I will take that as a decided no, and I will make other arrangements. I hope, Susan, please let me know if that helps you, right? So you wanna, when you're thinking about the character, if you're thinking about living into your own brand and making sure that all of the questions we asked above, how you're following up, how accessible you are, what energy, all of that stuff, you want to think about who you've decided to be. So I have a quick journal prompt for you, and it is the me, this for me, so the me that makes 6 figures per month on repeat and with ease. Right? So when you like put that in with you, the me that makes 5 figures a month, the me that makes 4 figures a month, on repeat and with ease, doing the things that I love, what does that person do every day? How does she show up? When and how often, and in what energy? So I really journal this. I journal some version of this every single day. Sometimes I just start with like, I now choose and decide, or I forget what I did this morning. It was something similar. Oh, I actually did that exact prompt today. The me that is making 6 figures per month on repeat and with ease. And then it's just, I actually go into like every aspect of that person, right? Because that allows me to make decisions borrowing from the future, right? So making decisions. So I don't just have a vision board that I pass flippantly on the way to my office. You know, I make decisions based on where I'm ultimately going to land. Because if my actions today line up with where I ultimately will be, then I'm guaranteed to get there. Does that make sense? We often do it backwards. We start to make decisions from where we are now, like, and trying to get someplace. The purpose of journaling, the purpose of really anchoring your own positioning and brand is so that you can make decisions from that place where all of this is already done. If you need more direction there, put a comment, give me a specific question so I can answer that, because this is really important. It changed everything in my business. I stopped trying to make decisions like from right now, what do I think will get me there? And I started kind of going into the future. It's like, well, if I already had multiple $1 million in the bank, if I already was making X number of dollars a month, then what would I be doing today? Does that make sense? So then my actions today are guaranteed to get me where I want to go. So that's a journal prompt, right? But essentially, what feels amazing and generous for you when it comes to how you're showing up in the marketplace? So I want to talk quickly, because I skipped this earlier, like what are the rules of engagement for you? And remember the person, the woman, right? Doesn't matter what role you're in, right? The person who is always accessible to all people, and you never have a calendar or a schedule of your own. You're just rushing to meet the next person, and you're always like the yes girl. Yes, I can, call me anytime, and you're answering your phone every time it rings. You're going to quickly become the person of least value in your market, because we are trained to pursue people with more limited access. It's why those people make more money, right? I can't just call Gary Vee up on the phone, right? I can't, he's not going to answer some random call from 757 number. That's not going to happen. And so you have to have rules of engagement. So quick example, everybody knows that I don't answer my phone. Everybody knows that, right? And in fact, like when my phone rings, I literally look at it like it's lost its mind, right? Like it's grown two heads. Like phone rings and I'm not expecting it. Nobody has an appointment. I'm literally like, who calls someone without an appointment, right? Like this is outrageous behavior. Who would ever do that, right? But the truth is, that's a rule of engagement for me. When I had private clients paying $2,500 a month for 2 sessions with me each month, they didn't call me willy-nilly. They didn't just pick up the phone and expect me to answer. We had rules of engagement. And that was not about my ego. It wasn't. It was about proper positioning, but it also was very much based on that question, who would I be? What would I be doing? What would the rules be? And the truth is, I would have burned out years ago if I allowed people to have unfiltered access to me, because I'm an introvert and I crave a lot of time alone. And so I show up as a better coach when access to me is very, very protected and deliberate. So for me, it's like access is very called out when members have access to me, and what that looks like is first and third Thursday of every month, right? And then the last Tuesday of every month via email. There's very strict rules of engagement, and that not only positions me better, but it also allows me to, take care of me and show up with the energy that I need to show up for. So you want to make sure, again, that you are bringing this persona to life in everything that you do. Typically, we think only in terms of the tangible, right? And we think in these terms of like fake it till you make it, bullcrap. Spending money you don't have, buying designer bags you can't afford. We focus on like the clothes that we're wearing, or the car that we're driving, or the, what our website looks like. And I'm not saying these things you shouldn't think about, but I'm saying we need to go much deeper. It's really about how we are engaging in the marketplace, right? So I never created positioning rules based on where I was right then. Like when in 2004, maybe it's 2003, I don't know, but I had to show up as a mentor. I had to be paid as a mentor. I didn't have any backup plan. Remember, I had already shut down my HR business. And I put my back against the wall financially. And I just had to gut it out. And so I had no backup plan. And I never exaggerated or pretended that I was more successful than I was. I did have success at that point in a different business. I never bought things I couldn't afford. I didn't really have credit, so that wouldn't have been an option anyway. But I also showed up as if I was someone that people should listen to, right? I showed up in an energy that was, I am Michelle Pippin, and I am one of the few business coaches out there, even in 2003, 2004, who has proven business experience in multiple industries. And I have something to share with people, right? And I had to really get myself into that role. The truth is, I had wanted to be a business coach for a little while by 2003, 2004. But back then, I thought that you had to live in a mansion on the beach in Malibu in order to be a business coach, right? That was the persona that they had, and they had their like private jets, and they had these pictures, and come to find out, a lot of them were using the same picture of their house being built on the beach or whatever. But that was what I had, and I thought, well, when I make it really big, I'm going to be a business coach, right? When I make it really big, and then I'm like, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to go in there. I never lied. I never exaggerated my success, but I went in there and I acted like I had something to say that was worthy of being listened to. And that was actually the truth. It's all about who you are perceived to be in the market, and you cannot afford to leave this to chance, right? All right. So for ultimate autonomy, for the being able to charge what you want, show up when you want, make your own rules of engagement, you need to be positioned as in demand and highly valuable. Here are some tools that I use for this. And it doesn't matter what your natural bent is, right? You can find a way to use these tools to your advantage, okay? And these are listed in no particular order, right? So one way to raise your positioning within your market is figure out how to speak either on your own stage or someone else's stage. I'll be very honest with you, I started hosting my own events because I was not being picked to speak on someone else's stage. And I inherently knew the value of being on stage and speaking. And so when nobody else wanted me to be on their stage, I just started my own events and created my own stage, right? So when you're speaking, maybe you're not a great speaker. Well, I'm not a great speaker. But if you're really, hate that aspect of it, you can be interviewed on stage. You can set up your own interviews. I've actually had clients do that, right? And when you've set that up and you've filled the event and you have 2 chairs up there and someone's interviewing you, that's even better positioning, right? All because you don't like to speak or you're not good at speaking. So speaking on someone else's stage, great tool for positioning. The second thing is being published. You do not have to publish a book to be well positioned, although that's an amazing way to go, right? Some of the best money I've ever made was a book that I published and printed, never sold on Amazon, although I am brushing it off and I am going to be publishing on Amazon soon. It's called the No Longer Broke Coach book. And but what I did was I printed it, I used it as a lead magnet, and I filled events, small group events for $3,000 to $5,000 a pop. It was one of the most profitable things I've ever done. And did I ever, like, I never really sold any copies. I don't think I ever sold any copies of that book actually, but I use it as a positioning tool. But also you can be published, you can have your articles published on your own site, obviously as a blog, but you can also find so many other sites to publish you. There are a million sites that you can go to that are desperately looking for content. So if you are willing to write, or even getting a ghostwriter to write on your behalf, if you're willing to write, you can and should be published. And remember, when you have your article published, it's not so much that the benefit is that everybody's gonna find it and realize you're a big deal. The benefit with it being published is what you do with it, right? So you want to make sure that you put it on your website, like as seen in, you know, all the little tricks of that. So also having interviews published, whether they are published on iTunes as a podcast or published in magazines or whatever. So being published, speaking, those are two great tools of positioning. Consistency is the least popular and most effective way to be properly positioned in your marketplace, right? Consistency. One of the things that allows me to make the money that I make with relative ease is I'm still here, right? I'm still here. I've never needed a relaunch. I've never needed like anything like that. I'm still here as a business mentor. I haven't changed, right? I didn't go back into the changing booth and come out with like a super fancy outfit. Although actually I talked to someone recently and who is joining my team this year. And she said, this is what she said. She goes, we need to get you out of the country. We need to get you out of those cowboy boots. And I said, no, you're off track, right? That's who I am. I don't want to be anybody else. I'm not going to put on the suit and the fancy crap to go and get on someone's stage and pretend to be something